What's up, FJ Nation? You're listening to Forum Junkies, a program that promotes your anguish and feeds on your sweet, delicious tears. I'm your host, Spiritus. Joining us again this week as a special guest host, Slayer of Pixelated Dragons, Jack of all trades, Master of all, Huck. And joining me as always, the ferocious feral, the bear that bears all, the man who put the rage into the rage bar, Darksend. On this week's episode, we'll be highlighting interesting posts made on WoW forums from across the internet on subjects including the potential upside of looking for raid, will looking for raid work as intended, what are you looking forward to in 4.3, and the discussion over the Firelands nerfs. But first, I want to invite you to like us on Facebook at facebook.com/forumjunkies. Follow us on Twitter at forumjunkies, all one word, add us on Google+, and sub to Forum Junkies on iTunes. Also, if you've read a post you'd like discussed or have general comments or suggestions, send us an email at forumjunkieswebcast@gmail.com. Again, that's forumjunkieswebcast@gmail.com. Getting right into it, the first post we're highlighting today comes from Thorinsage from the official forums, who writes about the potential upside of the Looking for Raid feature. Thorinsage writes, quote, "One possible benefit that could come from this new feature is the population of people who raid and understand the difference in mechanics between a 5-man, 10-man, and 25-man content should drastically increase. Take ZA and ZG for instance. When one of those dungeons first hit our realms, many people had no idea what they were doing and would fail over and over. Now, with increased gear levels and more importantly a lot of experience, those 5-mans don't seem as hard for many players. Some people still fail, and unfortunately that will always be the case, but many have learned to understand how to deal with multiple boss attacks and abilities, making them better players all around. In theory, if there are more people who raid using LFR, then there will be more raid-ready players available for normal and heroic content. How does this help the normal and heroic mode dedicated players? Well, that means you have a much better chance at recruiting new players to join your guilds or plug a missing slot in your raid lineup when someone fails to show up on your regular roster. I'd like to hear your feedback on this and what other pros and even cons you see with the addition of LFR. Again, that was Thorinsage from the official forums. Now, to me, this seems like a pretty straightforward hypothesis, but I'm curious if it will actually play out this way, because honestly, I think it's tough to say up or down whether LFR will increase the quality of the recruiting pool, or if it will even, over the long term, increase interest in raiding, period, for that matter. What do you guys think? Will LFR increase the size and quality of the recruiting pool?
Well, first of all, I want to say Blizzard is tooting their own horn. This feature is going to force people to use their in-game voice chat, which no one has used for the past, 5 years since they put it in?
I think I tried it once.
Otherwise, every single person that queues up is going to have their own 10-man vent server on the side just in case none of the other 9 people in their random have a vent server? Like, how is that going to work?
But I don't think that's the intent, though. I think the intent is for it to be able to be done without talking, like a 5-man. I think it's supposed to be 5-man type content, but it's the raid.
Maybe they're trying to get back into the days of back when you had Upper Spire and Strat and Skolo as 10-mans back in vanilla before jumping up to the 40-mans. But I don't know. It just seems like we talked about this on the show before, having 3 tiers of difficulty. I'm glad they're doing this now on the last tier, but are they going to, if they keep this going into the next expansion and have it for every tier next expansion, this can create serious balancing problems for them. Everything else aside, we've talked about balancing 3 tiers of content, or 3 tiers of eye level and difficulty in the same raid tier. The only people who are going to use this are the people who are pugging. So it's basically dropping down your pool of recruitment, actually, because the people who are pugging would have 359 last tier mixed in with 346. And then the people who are pugging Firelands are going to have 378 mixed in with 353s from ZAZG. What this is going to happen is your recruits are now going to have less gear because the content is easier, dropping lower eye level gear. So honestly, I think it's having the exact opposite effect of what this guy is saying. Your recruits are going to have worse gear than they would right now. They may have more of that worse gear, but they're still going to have worse gear. They may have 7 slots instead of 5. But the fact is, it's still not going to be as good.
Well, I definitely think that LFR does have a positive side that can be spun upon it, which the way I look at it as somebody who already has a tune that's, ready to raid, geared up, whatever, and all eye level stuff. This will actually help me deal with my alts faster. It seems like this expansion, more than any other expansion, my alts have just been complete lackluster in gear because we've been so focused on content and getting, to be server first or whatever. This has two different sides to it. This does have the side that you two are pointing out, whereas the community, whenever they have, their mains or whatever, and they don't have time to do regular guild raids and stuff like that, they can just queue up for this and go. It's much more lenient. The problem with it is that the gear is going to be such a low degrade, and the content itself is going to be such a lower degrade in difficulty. I don't know if it will bring more people that are ready to raid, like this guy says. In fact, this could almost backfire, and the community could see it as, these people go in, they do this, and they think all raids are this easy, and they just think it's like looking for dungeon where the difficulty is the same, you're just doing it at random.
What strikes me the oddest here is that if they did it right, it could be the answer. It really could. It could be the answer that they're looking for.
Oh, definitely. There's just so many problems with getting it right.
I think we've been starstruck with Blizzard whenever they implement something like this. We always go, this is what it could be, but it always turns out to be 50% less of what it could be.
And I don't think that's necessarily a indictment on the developers, but maybe more or less an indictment on what they have to work with. It's like anything else. When you're as dominant as Blizzard is in this arena, and in this case, and what I mean by that, I don't mean like in the game sphere world. I'm talking about just the relationship between the customer and Blizzard, right? Blizzard sets success, right? They have the ability to say, this is what we're going to do, and this is what we're going to deem it as successful.
Mm-hmm. They've got excellent PR officers. They did it back with Cataclysm. Cataclysm on paper looked perfect. We were all going, oh, they're bringing back classic WoW. And it wasn't that. It was just a new expansion, a new, completely reworked version of the game that it had transformed into.
Right, and I think that's their problem, is that on one side of things, they're developing this thing, but what they're setting the goal for it to be is much bigger than what it could actually do.
But you got to look at it from the perspective of most companies do that. Whenever they implement something new, or they do the big premiere of the iPad 24 or whatever, let's say. The fact of the matter is they're just going to play this thing up into where everybody wants to buy one. It's going to be a letdown. It always is. But as a company, it almost feels as though they make themselves play it up so they can get more people coming back. I think that's the major thing with the LFR here. They're not looking at the community and saying, okay, do you guys think this is a good idea? They're turning to Activision and going, okay, how do we get more people back for casual players?
And this kind of segues into our next topic, which asks if LFR will work as intended. And Nissalee from the official forums made the post on the topic. Nissalee writes, quote, "I'd like to hear everyone's opinion on this matter. Personally, I don't understand why there is a need for lower grade tier 3 for those who use the LFR function. The point of LFR is convenience. However, that doesn't mean people who use it will have an easier boss fight. Only filling the raid will be faster. In fact, pugging raids on LFR will probably prove to be a challenge in its own right. Allowing LFR to ignore raid lockouts doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me either. It just seems like a means to allow players to do the first few easy bosses of a raid for the items they want, then leave the group. The whole thing seems a bit off to me. I thought LFR was meant to help those of us who have a hard time filling a raid for the week. I really see these lower item level tier 13 pieces becoming difficult to obtain due to the nature of the common pug group. What are all of your thoughts on this?" Again, that was Nissalee from the official forums. First, I want to kind of flesh out what, in my opinion, the intent of LFR is, and I kind of alluded to it already, but I guess I want to be a little more specific with it. I'm sure there are many reasons, but the core concept, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, if you think I'm wrong, is to get more bodies into the raid zones and down bosses.
I think you're wrong.
You think I'm wrong? Okay, well,
here's what I think. Here's what I think it is. It's back in the day. I said this a few minutes ago. Is that you had 5-mans, 10-mans, 120-man for 4 tier or 3 tiers of content, and then your 40 mans, and eventually another 20 man added on later. This is Blizzard not thinking their game would last this long originally, so the game wasn't designed this way, and they backed themselves into a lot of corners, and this is just another one of those corners they've backed themselves into.
Oh, wait, I think we're on the same page, though.
No, hold on. I think what Blizzard really wants to do here is if they had just put out 10-man non-raids, if that's possible, 10-mans that are not raids. I'm not really sure, how they would have done that because there's 10-man raids, but a 10-man that was in the queue with ZAZG difficulty level, but required 10 people instead of 5 people. So there was that stepping stone, because it's a huge jump right now from...
Well, essentially, you're talking about Karazhan.
Basically.
Yes.
Because there's a huge jump right now from 353s to 378s. And that difficulty, even on 10-man normal, doesn't necessarily translate from 5-man heroic, even at a ZAZG heroic level, to... a normal 10-man Firelands. And it's going to be even more with 4.3 and Deathwing because no one's going to do those old raids. You could say, well, you could use 10-man Bastion of Twilight and 10-man Firelands next tier, but no one's going to do those raids because of the way content's becoming obsolete. Blizzard needed something to be that old UBRS type of instance that was a stepping stone between 5-mans and their raid content. But because the difference between 5-man and 25 and 10-man being viable now is so much smaller than 10 to 40-man, they don't have that opportunity to create those dungeons unless they wanted to do something like create a 7-man heroic or something. So Blizzard has just backed themselves into a corner there where they needed to do this to give themselves a stepping stone. And I think the entire purpose of this and the reason it does not share a lockout is so it can be that stepping stone, just like Karazhan was.
Well, this is my theory, and my tinfoil hat theory, is that in order to justify spending resources on developing raid content, they need bodies in the raids doing the content. If they don't have that, then they really can't justify spending all the development time doing it. And the more people that do it, then the easier it is to justify producing raid content. And I honestly think that Blizzard's in-house metrics are seeing a rapid decline in not only people downing bosses, but people even attempting to raid at all.
Yeah, I have to just straight up quote Kaz here because I cannot say it better myself. They tried to target an untapped group of raiders by listening to their complaints and change the entire way the raiding system worked to try and entice them to partake. And the truth of the matter is, none of them realistically ever wanted to raid anyways. And that's the end of his quote. And I'll add on to that. Because of that, because they were trying to target that untapped group of raiders, they were changing the way the game worked for people who wanted to raid.
Right.
This is allowing them to tap that market, and even if it's unsuccessful, will have no backlash whatsoever on the raiding community that actually wants to raid.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that maybe some people are misunderstanding about this, because it's really not a bads versus pros thing. It's a gamer type versus a gamer type.
The nags versus the OGs.
Yeah, well, yeah. I made a post on TankSpot that really kind of fleshed out this whole thing in my head, and I basically summed it up to like you had the OG type gamer and you had the new age gamer that someone cleverly figured out actually acronyms into NAG, which was not my intent at all by doing that. But I think the majority player base plays WoW almost exclusively as a solo game with multiplayer interaction. And what I mean by that is that they like the fact that other people are around them because they can measure their individual achievement, but they don't necessarily care to join a team and rely on others for their individual progress. And that's why there's a lack of interest in raiding amongst this population, because in current raiding, it really isn't possible for 10 or 25 individuals to win. It takes a team of 10 or 25 people working together to win in raiding. So in order for 25 individuals to defeat a raid boss, the encounters necessarily must be, ridiculously tuned down in difficulty for there even to be a chance.
It's got to be patchwork without the hateful strike cleave.
Right, exactly. It has to literally be, I'm going to pew-pew the boss, and that's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to be the tank, and I'm going to sit there and take hits, and I'm the healer, and I'm going to heal the tank. That is all it can be when you put that many people together that are individuals doing their individual thing.
I think the core issue that we're going to see pop up with the looking for raid system is something that we see on a day-to-day basis, which is basically the problems whenever you're creating a raid in a guild is what, you need these certain classes. I think this, within Essence, is going to definitely show how much one class is played more than the other. I mean, you guys already know that looking for dungeon like 30 minutes to an hour sometimes. Could you imagine how long it's going to take for this? The way that they've spun this, the way that they've shown this to the entire community is you'll be able to click this button and within a reasonable amount of time you'll be in there raiding. That's not going to happen.
The other thing that Nissalee brought up, and this is actually something that I hadn't even thought of, is the fact that there's an absence of cooldown is that people can leave a raid after a boss is down because they either got or didn't get the item they're looking for, and there's no other bosses that have anything they're interested in. They can just leave and then requeue. And if there's other people in that raid that need something from another boss, then they're going to have to wait for someone to fill that spot. I think that's a serious
really
problem.
Works off if the item you really need is off the first boss, because otherwise you're going to be sticking around till the boss you need it off anyway. So
possibly, or it could be like Firelands, where there's 4.
There's 4 right at the beginning that you can choose from.
Right, there's 4 at the beginning you can choose from. So if someone's sitting here going, well, I'm never going to really put in the effort to down bosses 6, 7, and 8. But the first 5 bosses we can all choose from. And once we do the boss that has the item that I'm looking for, and I do or do not get it, then forget about it. Why do I need to do these other bosses? There's no point in it.
What they need to do in order to prevent that, because that's a huge problem in looking for dungeon right now, even at low levels, people just leave because, they don't get their loot, whatever, and they requeue. There needs to be very strict policy that whenever, you leave, even if you kill one boss and you leave, you still get a day cooldown or something. They need to put something ridiculous in there that, basically tells the 12-year-old community, you're not going to just leave after one boss because you don't like the way everything's working out.
But see, that's counterintuitive to the audience that they're aiming for, because the audience they're aiming for is short burst play type people where they're looking for 45 minutes at max to complete something. I mean, I don't care how easy they make it, just the logistics of getting everyone moved around an instance is going to take more than 45 minutes to kill 4 bosses.
It's just what we were saying not even 5 minutes ago. They back themselves up into these corners and then they have to find the easiest way out. This is the perfect example of them trying to make the cake and then eating it at the same time. You can't.
That was the most botched euphemism I've ever...
They're trying, the best of both worlds, and it's just simply not going to happen. Because if you try to nail the best of both worlds for the community that they are trying to reach, this problem is going to come up where they kill Halphus, and all of a sudden half the raid's gone because they didn't get the offhand healing book that dropped off of him.
Okay, our next topic is on what to look forward to in 4.3. Girouette from MMO Champion writes, quote, I've been skimming and reading various posts and threads since this morning when all the 4.3 interviews, etc. went up on the various internet sites and the MMO Champion front page. And I've finally had quite enough of the whining and moaning about rogue legendaries, so-called easy mode raid finder 25 mans, GC needing to be fired, etc., etc. And I finally decided that I'd like to hear some positive reactions to the news. Any takers? Anyone looking forward to the COT 5-mans? Any rogues see the dagger news and think, oh my god, I must have them? Any players unable to raid looking forward to the raid finder as an opportunity to see content and the fights they never get to see? Or a chance to practice in off times with your guild? Again, that's Girouette from MMO Champion. It was kind of nice to see a not so Debbie Downer post for a change, because it seems like a ton of posts on all the forums are just really down in the dumps about everything. So this is actually a pretty easy question. What are you looking forward to the most in 4.3?
Was it the pre-order for the original game back before the game even launched that had the book with it as a pre-order bonus that I can't remember, but anyway, it was either the Burning Crusade or the original WoW that when you pre-ordered it, you got a box with a book inside of it, and it was one of the, I actually have it sitting right here, maybe. Yes, no, I moved it. The War of the Ancients trilogy.
Uh-huh.
And I read that, and it was only part 1 of the trilogy that you got for free. And the very first thing I did, as soon as I finished reading it, granted I didn't, read it after a year after the game had already been out, or after that expansion had already been out or whatever. But the first thing I did when I finished reading it, went to the store, bought all the WoW books I found on the shelf. Finished reading the War of the Ancients trilogy, and the one on Medivh, one on Thrall, but the one that I enjoyed the most was Day of the Dragon, which was about Wildhammer and Red Shirt Guy, basically, and Deathwing and the Demon Soul. When I read that, I have been waiting for 4.3 since I finished reading that book.
You knew it was 4. You knew the numbers 4.3. You knew it. You felt it.
Yes, I know that when this game is at the end,
I've trained my entire life for this moment.
of the third expansion, I will finally have the culmination I've been looking for.
So, mocking aside about reading a WoW book, circumstances what they are, I will probably do the 3 new 5-mans and then never log into this game again. But I cannot wait to finish Deathwing's lore, because those books were just so amazing. You actually see from the Goblin's point of view when they put the armor on Deathwing for the very first time. And reading that chapter after having played WoW for however many years it was just wow. It was... I've been waiting for the encounter since I read that book.
I'm very excited for something along the same lines, but a different take of it. Going back in time during I think it's the second 5-man, and taking the Dragon Soul. I'm kind of wondering how Blizzard's going to spin this one whenever it comes down to kind of changing the course of Azerothian history. I'm sure all of you have seen the butterfly effect. I don't want to do that 5-man and then come back out and all of a sudden orcs are purple. I'm scared. No, I'm just kidding. I think that the way that they're going to tie all this in is going to be extremely engaging. I'm going to love it to death. I can't wait to see Illidan without, Hand of Gul'dan or Skull of Gul'dan and all this other nonsense. And I'm also extremely excited for the Darkmoon Faire Island, only because I'm a conspiracy theorist, and I'm thinking it's going to be next to the Panda Island.
Another thing is, I get the feeling that some people actually might be looking forward to having tier gear in tier 13 only dropping from bosses. If you don't know, you're not going to be able to purchase any tier gear from the vendors with VP. Everything is going to be dropped from the boss. What do you guys think about that? Is that something you're looking forward to, or no?
I thought it was the dumbest thing ever that there was that they just randomly picked 2 pieces. Like, first of all, why was it the helm and shoulders and not the helm and chest that were only available for raiders?
Why
I think it was just
not the helm.
I don't know. The fact that there was just 2 random arbitrary pieces that were not available, and there were 2 ways they could have fixed it. Put everything for Valor points, or put nothing for Valor points, and I am much happier they went this way, because as a raider, trying to get all my badges of frost during ICC to get my 4-piece, which was amazing for tanking, it was a royal pain, because I literally needed 700 badges worth just for my tanking gear, and it was a little bit insane when my first 600 of them, or first 400 of them, were absolutely reserved for my set pieces. It was just insane. So I'm glad they went this route.
Do you think that it's possible that the reason why they're not putting any tier pieces on vendors for VP is to basically force the hand to use the LFR tool?
Yes.
Oh, absolutely. That's the only way they can do it, because it goes back to what I said earlier. The LFR in itself, I would think, has to drop justice if these were being sold at a vendor, but since they're not, I'm pretty sure they can get away with it dropping Valor, and it really won't be a big deal because they can't get any tier off of it. So basically what I'm saying is they can get Valor points, but it's basically for naught because they can't get the current best eye level tier for it. In order to get that, you have to do the regular raids.
I will say this decision seems like it's devaluing Valor points to the point where even more you're going to cap for the first 4 weeks, and then you'll have everything bought. and you'll just be buying BOEs for the auction house for gold at that point.
I've always been kind of like one of those one or the other kind of people anyways. I always thought it would be cool that you got stuff from a boss that dropped, like, some unique item from that person, and then you took it somewhere and then they made your armor, from your, whatever class you were. If you were a hunter, then you go to the hunter den. If you were the priest, you go to the church or whatever. And, they were like, oh, cool, we can use this to craft you, ta-da, this heroic piece of armor. Not heroic as far as heroic mode, but like heroic as in hero. But yeah, I do agree that it is basically the reason for doing this is to force the hand on the LFR. Do you think they'll continue to do this for future expansions?
I absolutely think they'll do this. I think the only reason why they implemented this is because LFR is coming out, and they're going to allow Valor to come from LFR. Or at least whenever you complete a raid, you get a ton of Valor. That's the only way I think they could have, kept the difference between the two very apparent.
Okay, our final topic is on the discussion over the Firelands nerfs. Swelt from TankSpot writes, quote, I'm pretty sure that every raid instance has some kind of nerfs post-release. The difference tends to be about the nature of those nerfs and the timing of them, the way in which they are implemented. Naturally, everyone is leaping to compare these nerfs to the blanket HP nerfs at Tier 11 got upon Tier 12 release. And that's a fairly obvious comparison to make, given that the announcement refers to them. But people aren't as quick to mention the stealthier nerfs that Tier 11 heroic modes received over time. Like the day you walked into BWD and discovered that Magma had gone from being one of the hardest to one of the easiest bosses, or when Malarak or Atramedes or Halphys suddenly seemed a bit easier. Hell, Heroic Nefarian started out harder than he ended. But there are some aspects about this announcement which are unusual. They announced it in advance. It appears to be a blanket damage/health reduction rather than specific encounter mechanic nerfs, and it's being announced before the next patch PTR is even available. Again, that's Swelt from TankSpot. What do you guys think? Was the approach to these nerfs better or worse than past models? Should there even be nerfs? And with the LFR introducing an easy mode, will we even see nerfs in 4.3?
Well, I said the exact same thing last year. This is Blizzard being lazy. I'm not talking about the nerfs themselves. I'm talking about the way they're doing it. In the past, going back to the past expansions, specifically anything before Old War, once it got to TOC and ICC, straight percentage buffs and other lazy stuff, whatever. With Old War and before, they would look at each specific encounter and say, okay, this is the mechanic people are having trouble with, or, this is bugged and it's happening more than it should, or they look at each mechanic of each specific fight on a mechanic by mechanic basis and change one or two things. This is Blizzard just being lazy and saying, this is old content, we don't want to put any more time into it. If you were 1 week away from it or 6 months away from it, a kill, you'll both be getting them tomorrow. Maybe it's because this is the first time in the history of my guild that they've nerfed the content before we've killed the end boss in that instance. But it's just way too soon. The blanketness of both this and last tier is just them being lazy. In this case, maybe I'm not as upset about it because of the length of time and the fact that it's still not on the PTR, that, okay, maybe it is development time that they needed, because I understand what it takes, especially with a lot of the new mechanics they're trying for the Deathwing fight. I understand what their programmers have to do in order to implement that properly. Maybe it would take away development time, whereas in the past, it was kind of accepted to have a little longer between, and people are just now more impatient now than they have been in the past. But I have no problem with them nerfing every fight at once. I just wish that they would nerf a specific mechanic of the fight rather than just saying, okay, this is too hard, we're just going to take off 30% HP. I would rather them say, okay, for example, on Bethtalak, it's the pulse needs to go out every 10 seconds instead of every second, or every 7, which actually in that case might make the fight harder because one cooldown couldn't cover two things. See, that's why I'm not a developer. Because it's things like that.
It's not easy. It's not easy at
honestly,
all.
Honestly, what I just said would make the fight harder, because right now 2 cooldowns can cover, or 1 cooldown can cover 2 blasts.
Right.
But what I just suggested would actually make the fight harder.
Nice going.
Oh, man.
I don't think this is an issue of Blizzard being excessively lazy. I think, in essence, this is actually just another miscommunication between two different factions of Blizzard. You know, basically what I think happened is somebody left notes out for Firelands nerfs, and they just left them out on like the mail that needs to go out, and somebody grabbed it early and said, okay, let's go ahead and push this. That happens a lot. Apparently so. I mean, but I also think at the same time that these nerfs are fine. They are completely fine. But I don't think that they should even be announced that they were going to happen until 4.3 was on the PTR. We don't know how long until it's going to be on the PTR. So here's the ever-burning question that gets me really fired up. How long am I going to have to deal with easy mode, heroic Alice Razor or whatever?
Have you killed it yet? If you've killed it once already, you're past the point where, damn it, you nerfed it when I was 1 week away from killing it, so just enjoy the easier content. But like you said, it does actually feel that way, because if you look at 4.1 and 4.2, the reason they were pushed back is because Blizzard blatantly said, not enough guilds have killed this. And if you look at all the nerfs in the past, I feel like there's a guild out there somewhere where they look at this guild before the tier starts and say, as soon as this guild kills the end heroic mode boss, that's when we're going to put the nerfs in. I honestly feel that's what Blizzard does.
It's the benchmark guild.
For the longest time, I felt like it's been my guild, because every time my guild kills an end boss, it seems like a week or two later is when those hard mode nerfs go in. It honestly feels that way. If you look at the flat number of guilds, I feel that's how Blizzard's always done it. They've done it by a flat number. If you look at the flat number of guilds, this is the lowest amount worldwide, and especially US. I think maybe 20 guilds in the US had killed 10 or 25 heroic rag.
That's amazing.
That is the lowest flat number of guilds that have ever killed an end boss before an end boss has been nerfed in the history of this game.
Well, I definitely think it's interesting to look at WoW progress before these nerfs happen, and 50, 60 guilds at most had gotten heroic rag down. Now, every time I click next on that page, here it is. Now, since the nerfs have happened, 210 guilds have killed it on hard mode.
The number of guilds that are disappearing from the 25 only list as well should be another indication to Blizzard.
That's been happening since the beginning of the expansion.
Like, there are so many guilds, including mine now, as of tonight. Congrats, by the way. They just killed it, 10 minutes ago. That are 6 out of 7 25 and 10-man heroic rag kill.
Right.
So, I mean, the number of guilds that are 6 out of 7 25 and now 10-man heroic rag should definitely say, Blizzard, you screwed up.
So, Darksend, you like it when they do targeted nerfs to specific mechanics to basically rectify a failure point that most guilds are having. And you think that's the best model there should be. Do you think that in 4.3, since we're going to see 3 tiers of difficulty, do you think there'll be nerfs for 4.3?
Yes. I am surprised at this, but I think I'm quoting this right. One of the interviews actually said, we want the entire WoW community to experience Heroic Deathwing before the next expansion. I swear I saw that in one of the interviews.
Heroic Deathwing? Are you sure they just didn't say Deathwing? Because I seriously doubt they said Heroic Deathwing.
Yes, it did say Heroic Deathwing. I found the exact quote on MMO-Champ. Heroic Deathwing will eventually be made easier after the top guilds kill it so that more people can experience it.
Okay, but that's not everyone. That's more people. So you're right. There will be. They are saying that they are going to nerf it. Do you think they'll nerf LFR?
Let me just say this too. The fact that it's the last boss of an expansion, so that 5 levels with the next expansion, and they'll be able to 2-man heroic 10-man Deathwing. It doesn't seem necessary to nerf something that's the last boss of an expansion.
Yeah,
that's just my point of view.
Blood Death Knight will take care of Deathwing 10-man, no problem.
Exactly.
Do you think they'll nerf LFR ever?
I hope not. Can it get easier?
If they implement it the way that they're saying, if they nerfed it, literally what would happen is you walk into the LFR raid and epics just rain from the heavens.
That would be awesome. That would be the best instance ever. Just walk in there and be like, hey, what does this button do? Oh! And this loot rains from the sky, and you're like, cool!
Oh my god.
It's the best! Thanks, Blizz! I understand nerfing heroic content, right? That makes sense to me in at some point. And I feel that nerfing normal mode content, I understand that. Here's the deal. If you have different tiers of skill levels, right? The heroic people, the people who do heroic modes, they are looking to be a completionist as far as progression is concerned. They want to eventually complete all the heroic fights, right? And people who are not really ever going to do heroic mode of the end boss, they're probably okay with not doing the heroic end mode of the boss. But they do want to see the end, the boss killed on normal. So I could understand nerfing normals, right? But when you add in the easy mode to it in LFR, then everyone can experience it. There's no one who, if anyone has any inkling of wanting to experience the Deathwing fight, they're gonna be able to do it. Maybe not get the best gear from beating Deathwing, but do the fight, yes.
Yeah, I can't tell you how excited we were when we killed Heroic Lich King, because we literally killed it. Granted, we had wiped the night before at like 11% 4 times before we ran out of attempts. But we killed Heroic Lich King on our second attempt of the night we killed it. We were done for the week. We were so happy we killed it. And then the next week rolled around, 25%, and there was about 30 guilds that killed it on Tuesday when 25% came out. The guilds that killed it at 25% no longer feel that sense of, yes, we finally killed them. It's, God, we killed it a week too late. It aggravates those people so much. Like, killing something a week after a nerf just drives you insane, especially after low percent wipes.
I agree with you. At the heroic level, at the heroic raider level.
I'm talking exclusively at the heroic level.
Right. But when you start getting into the normal, I think there are a number of people that are that will do some hard mode fights that would kind of feel cheated to some extent. But I guess I'm exclusively talking about their goal of everyone seeing the fight. And in that case, are nerfs really necessary for that goal? Because you're going to be able to do it in LFR.
I'm still kind of stuck on the nerfing LFR. I mean, what are they going to do? Clip his wings? I mean, how are you going to nerf Deathwing? Like, already on easy mode. I think the bottom line is that these nerfs, whenever they do come, because they are coming, we've seen this now for 2 tier contents, they come eventually. I don't think these nerfs, even in future expansions, will ever hit the LFR level. I think, almost in essence, the nerfs will bring them down to like maybe just 30% above the LFR easy modes, basically.
Really?
I do. I really.
So you think that a 25% nerf, whether it's across the board or targeted, you think that a 25% nerf will still be 30% more difficult than LFR?
It has to be. It absolutely has to be in order for them to hit this, this perfect amount, this perfect type of casual player they want to hit. It has to be that way.
Yeah, I guess you're right. That's amazing though to think about.
Yeah, I mean, you look at tier 11 and the nerfs that went into that. I don't know if you guys have done tier 11 normal since then. It is a joke. And I'm saying that in order for Looking for Raid to work, it's going to have to be easier than that.
Well, that's all the time we have for this edition. You've been listening to Forum Junkies with your guest host, Huck.
Hey, what's up?
Darksend.
5.0.0. Goblins have been added to the Deathwing encounter to remove the armor they put on them all those years ago.
And of course, yours truly, Spiritus. Remember to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. And as we will every week, we end our webcast with a segment we like to call Cool Story, Bro. So, Darksend, you like when Blizzard does targeted nerfs that nerf.
I have someone in my guild named Narf.
Narf!
There's a shaman in my guild named Narflack.
Christ,
I'm pouring a shot. Every time Narf comes up, we're just going to have to take a shot now.